Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar about enterprise-grade security in translation. So today we will talk about information security in the language industry. We will also talk about how Microsoft and how memoQ see this, what Microsoft and memoQ achieved together in the realm of information security. And since I'm not an expert, I would like to continue with that. So before we do that, a bit of housekeeping. We will have roughly 20 minutes of presentation, a panel discussion, and Q&A. But the way my experience goes is the panel discussion and the Q&A sometimes kind of melt into each other, which means that we will continuously look at the Q&A panel here in Teams, even if questions are asked during the session, during the presentations, we will bring those questions into the panel discussion if they are exciting and interesting, but I'm sure all of them will be. So today, there's three of us. I'm the least important here. So my name is Balázs Kis. I work for memoQ as Chief Evangelist. I'm also one of the founders. But it's been a long time since I last was a information security person, and there are much better experts on the call than I am. So we have Glenn Joyner from Microsoft. He's a customer security officer with a long history, years of experience in information security, and I will let him introduce himself later. And we also have Adam Klár, Chief Information Security Officer of memoQ, who I know Adam better. I know he's one of the most knowledgeable information security people that I know. So as the next movement, so to say, it will be a presentation first by Microsoft, by Glenn, about the enterprise security landscape, and then we continue with a presentation by Adam Klár, the CISO of memoQ, who introduces the memoQ's quest for a high level of information security protections for customers. Just to give you a little bit of an overview of how and why this is important. It's been, especially since the pandemic, it's been our experience that whenever you, as a service provider or as a software as a service provider like memoQ is, signs up an international client, the first thing that you need to clear, the most important thing that you need to fulfill is the requirement of top-level information security. Most clients have become really conscious and well informed about information security, and they are obviously very well informed of the risks of using either a cloud or an on-premises software solution, of the risks of dealing with each other as business partners online. And this also, when you can prove that you care well enough of information security and compliance with rules that are known both to provider and client, that's a basis for trust. That is now a prerequisite of trust between two business partners. So it's, in a way, it's no surprise that this comes before the features of a software solution, the quality metrics of a language service, and I could go on, but I don't want to, because like I said, I'm not the best expert here. I would like to hand over to Glenn Joyner. Glenn, please introduce yourself and then begin your presentation, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much. I'm just loading my presentation in for everyone. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here to speak with you. Just my role. Used to be called Customer Security Officer. It's now a Chief Security Advisor. So I'm a Chief Security Advisor with Microsoft. What is that role and what do I do here? Effectively, just to give you a little bit about my background. I've spent 20 years in the field being a Chief Information Security Officer. So responsible for securing the data, the protecting organizations from hackers and bad actors. I've done this for 20 years for global organizations in Canada, where I am based, and in the United States as well as software as a service organizations. That's my background here at Microsoft. I'm a strategic advisor to customers. I speak with our customers to provide them strategy on how to protect their information and how to protect their products for customers. I think the key word that I love how you ended that introduction with was trust. And trust is going to be a common theme for our discussion today. We live in a world where many of us consume our software services in our organizations from various providers. We need to trust them. We also exist in a world where we consume most of our technology from an ecosystem of providers such as our mobile phones, our email providers, and all of the things we take for granted every day. That ultimately relies on us to trust them, because effectively they're taking care of some of your most sensitive personal data. And so let's talk through that. I was asked to talk a little bit about the cyber threat world, and I can tell you that if I used this slide, I could change this slide every day for the speed at which the cybersecurity world is changing. It's dynamic and threats are out there. But there were a couple of areas that I wanted to just highlight from what we see in our position at Microsoft. And just to give you a little bit of grounding at Microsoft, we secure millions of companies through Office 365. We run a very large gaming portal in Xbox. We also consume our own products, and we run Azure, a hyperscale cloud for the world. All of those signals of information, the variety of that information, comes into our data feeds so that we get the ability to see what our customers, the threats that we are commonly facing. So there are a couple themes that I want to highlight for you. First, from our standpoint, the hackers are getting very good. The hackers are getting fast at what they do and efficient. When they get into a system, it takes them about a minute from logging into a system to then starting to ransomware data to start to attack an organization. This is danger, and this is something we absolutely want to prevent. The common theme that we see is hackers log in. They don't break in. And I just want that to sink in, and I'll repeat it one more time. Hackers log in typically, they don't break in. This is really because for a hacker, it's more efficient to use something that's already established to pretend to be somebody, and it's harder to detect and just easier effort for them. So we see password reuse enormously here at Microsoft. And for us, we've seen that double for over 1 year, the amount of attempts using passwords. So if there's one message I can give everybody, have multi-factor authentication enabled. It's incredibly important. It's an enormous defense, but this is what we're up against. Hackers are continually probing any service online. And we know now that most of the services we consume as an organization are software as a service, where we're using a third-party provider. That could be Microsoft, that could be Zoom, that could be a whole number. And we're authenticating into them to use. So again, password attacks are up. At Microsoft, we watch threat actors globally. We've seen that number increase by 5-fold, the number of nation states, of bad actor hacking organizations attacking. So why are they doing it? Because there's so much money. Just want to illustrate the amount that was earned in cybercrime last year. So if cybercrime itself was a nation, it would have the third largest GDP, gross domestic product, in the world, behind the US and China. That's how much money is at stake in cybersecurity, and that's why this is an incredibly important area. So I'm going to highlight just a couple of areas. One piece I do want to highlight in this slide, because I'll be mindful of our time, pardon me, is that we're seeing that organizations, when they have to secure, they use a lot of tools and a lot of vendors to provide their services. Every time you add a new tool, a new vendor, you're just creating some additional complexity. That's not bad, but as was stated in the introduction, it's part of the risk you need to manage. And as an organization, because those organizations are going to have your sensitive data, you need to trust them. The middle part of this slide is a depressing fact. It's the fact that We don't have enough cybersecurity professionals in the world, and I'm sure Adam can attest to that. Whenever I search for cybersecurity jobs online, I see more jobs than there are people. They're always in demand, and that gives the defenders a challenge versus the attackers. What we're seeing now is phishing and ransomware have taken a different level because the bad actors that used to sell or used to send improperly formatted emails to you, things with grammatical errors, they're now using generative AI to send perfect examples to you. So everything looks good and everything might be in your native language, depending on what country you're from. And depending on what city you're from or company you're from, everything looks perfect. This is a challenge, and this is what we're fighting against. And this is why when you are picking any partner to provide IT services to you, it's a very big trust decision that any organization needs to put in place. I want to highlight one element here, which is Microsoft pushes an annual security report. It's called the Microsoft Digital Defense Report. In our latest report, we found that the #1 most attacked organizations in the planet are IT organizations. Now, you might ask, why would IT organizations be the #1 most attacked factor? Not necessarily because of what they do, but because of whose information they have. There was a very famous attack several years ago called SolarWinds. And the objective of that SolarWinds attack was to, if I attack one, I get many. So somebody attacked SolarWinds, which was a software provider used by a lot of large organizations. And then once they had that software compromised, they used that to get access to a lot of other organizations. So this is why it's incredibly important to trust your third-party providers. Microsoft, we have the same story. We've been attacked. We are continually attacked by organizations. 2 years ago, we launched our Secure Future initiative. And for the purpose of time, I'll accelerate it a little bit. But this is where Satya Nadella, our CEO, sent an email to all staff saying, security is now your #1 priority. If you're faced with the decision, make an interesting new product or a new feature or make it secure, the decision is easy. Security first. Because we recognize that as one of the largest software providers in the world, the trust of our customers is integral. And trust takes a long time to rebuild once it's broken. So it's essential that we're demonstrating trust. These reports are published online, and I encourage you to take a look at them. But I want to just highlight that we've put 34,000 dedicated security engineers working on security at Microsoft as part of this. We know it's the largest cybersecurity endeavor globally. And why are we doing that? Because we recognize the importance of trust from our customers and why security is materially important to them. I'll leave you with one last slide, which again, I think dovetails into Adam's part. We recognize and we get questions from countries, we get questions from governments, we get questions from organizations large and small. Tell us how you're securing us. We need to trust you. At Microsoft, we have a service trust portal. And a part of this, we put our certifications online, the SOC 2 being one of them, and other global standards, because we recognize for us, our customers are global. Because we think that with trust, it's not something that I can just say, trust me. We have to demonstrate. And these artifacts, which are produced by independent assessors, are very important evidence that someone has worked with your team, observed what you're doing from a cybersecurity perspective, and documented that. And it's part of how we, as an organization and other software as a service organizations, need to convey trust to our customers. And now I'll be around for the Q&A and other discussion, but I want to hand it off to Adam. Adam, why don't you take it from here?
Thank you very much, Glenn. So welcome everyone, welcome to the webinar. My name is Adam Klar. Few words about me. I have 14 years of experience in the IT industry, spanning from system engineering positions to operations leadership and global compliance roles. I've served as a CISO twice, and I'm currently leading the security at memoQ, and I drove our SOC 2 preparation and audit end to end. So today I would like to share what we have learned throughout this process, what actually worked, and how to make compliance support the business instead of slowing it down. So one of the purpose of this webinar to kind of celebrate a milestone that we have recently achieved, and that is that memoQ achieved SOC 2 Type 2 compliance, memoQ TMS. And I would like to tell you a few words about this SOC 2 compliance process and audit process. Why is it important? What is it exactly? How to start the compliance process, etc. So SOC 2 is an independent audit report done by the certified public accountant firm, and it shows whether a service company has designed, implemented, and operating security controls. And I would like to put an emphasis on operating, because this is the most important differentiator compared to other security standards, for example, to ISO 27001. It looks at the operation over a period of time and checks if the controls are working over month or even a year. And why SOC 2 is important, why it's important to have a SOC 2 report. It's the fastest way for a SaaS company to turn security claims into independently verified proof that clears procurement and wins trust. This is especially true in the North American region with US clients or prospects, with Canadian prospects. This is the first security report or security standard they ask for. So, and this way we can prove that we have security controls and organizational controls working. And a few words about the journey. When I joined memoQ, I was mandated to prepare the organization for a SOC 2 audit, and there were tries before my arrival and there were activities before my arrival, but we haven't started this SOC 2 audit yet. When I have joined, I was given a gap analysis by a third-party auditor, and we have started to work on the gaps that were missing, the missing controls that were required to even start the SOC 2 audit process. We realized after a while that there are criterias and controls that might not even be relevant in our case. For example, the SOC 2 report, the auditing process consists of 5 areas: security, availability, confidentiality, processing integrity, and privacy. And we had controls or gaps related to processing integrity, which are relevant for high availability and high transactional systems. And we had to realize that some of those controls are not relevant to us. So the first step, I would say, is to identify and to tailor the scope to your organization. While tailoring the scope and selecting the relevant trust service criteria, it's very important to balance the existing company agility with the new controls, balancing agility with compliance. When I've joined memoQ, the first thing I've realized that we are talking about a very agile, very fast-moving, quickly adapting company with multiple software releases per year. And I wanted to implement the new controls required for SOC 2, but I wanted to be very careful about it. I wanted to do this without breaking anything. So the first step of the process, I would say, is defining the scope, what is really required, what is required from the customers, and have an alignment with the auditors. After, of course, we had the auditor alignment, business as usual and everyday life appeared, and we had to face other challenges. other challenges, meaning other security requirements. For example, during our preparation for the SOC 2 audit, we had to face a new European standard called NIS2, which stands for Network and Information Security. It is relevant for critical infrastructure service providers, but we had to make sure we had to be 100% if we are in scope for this new requirement or not. This paused our activities on the SOC 2 preparation, unfortunately, but as SOC 2, I would say, is nice to have and it's really important, NIS2 was a mandatory requirement, mandatory security requirement. And of course, on top of these new international requirement or European requirements, there were new customer or prospects, regional customer requirements, like new Canadian security requirements, which we had to align to. So this was a very important lesson for us. We had to find a way to streamline all these different security requirements, even the new ones, even the old ones that we wanted to maintain. This is how we came to a realization that we need to introduce a so-called GRC tool. Instead of working with consultants, we had to turn to another solution, another approach, which is implementing a tool workflow. GRC stands for Governance, Risk, and Compliance, and this is now our central tool to manage the different frameworks, to manage everything from ISO 27001 to GDPR through SOC 2 and other compliance requirements. We have implemented 7,000 automated checks, which I believe is key for compliance and compliance monitoring. And we have achieved real-time compliance monitoring or compliance dashboard, compliance view. And in the end, this is what enabled us to be confident that we have all the checks in place, all the controls in place to go ahead and start the SOC 2, first the SOC 2 Type 1 audit and the SOC 2 Type 2 audit. I will talk about the difference between the two types in a moment. So why SOC 2 is relevant and why SOC 2 is important in the US market? This is the procurement default. US buyers commonly ask for SOC 2. This is as a standard vendor trust artifact. This is an assurance style evidence. So SOC 2 Type 2 shows controls operated effectively over a period of time, which fits how the US risk teams evaluate vendors. CPA attestation credibility means that this is issued under AICPE, and this is an attestation standard, and it aligns with US audit culture and defensibility. Buyer-friendly review means that security teams in the US or in the North American market have a repeatable playbooks for reading SOC 2 reports, reading the scope, exceptions, subservice organizations. So if you are familiar with ISO 27001, you just get a certificate. Sometimes clients ask for the report, but the report is not in a standardized format. In case of SOC 2, we have a standardized report on the organizational and security controls, which is very useful for the buyers to identify where are the possible gaps or where are the possible exceptions, or to identify the security maturity of an organization. And of course, there's a network effect. It is a widespread US adoption. It is required from the SaaS organizations, and it is self-reinforcing. This is something that is known. This is something that became standard over the years. In this case, in the case of the North American market, ISO 27000 just doesn't cut it. ISO 27001 is a different product. It certifies information security management system, not a period-based controls. And it doesn't provide an effectiveness report of the controls. For example, for SOC 2, we had to provide thousands of artifacts and thousands of evidence to the auditor to demonstrate that we actually have working controls and we align to the SOC 2 requirements. There are less details for the customers. A certificate typically provides less granular testing detail than a SOC 2 report in case of ISO 27001. But the strength of the 27001 is in the globally accepted certificate. So the key takeaway, if you are aiming for US market, then go for SOC 2 Type 2. But if you would like to have something of a hybrid solution, what we do, because we aim for clients globally, aim for SOC 2 Type 2 and ISO 27001 combined. Now, memoQ TMS, the memoQ Translation Management System, is SOC 2 certified. We provide an enterprise-grade SOC 2 compliance that meets strict procurement requirements in the North American region. And with our GRC tool, we are able to provide real-time transparency into our security posture and compliance progress. It's not just an annual paperwork anymore. The memoQ TMS built for translation workflows where sensitive content and client data routinely move across teams and vendors. So security is really important in this environment. The SOC 2 compliance reduces vendor risks without slowing delivery, no trade-offs between speed and security. And I believe us having SOC 2 is a differentiator for enterprise buyers because translation is a part of the data supply chain and compromises are very expensive. This is how a report looks like. As I mentioned, we had to comply to hundreds of security controls and we had to provide thousands of evidence. We had to undergo a 1-month-long audit, but thanks to our GRC tool, it was relatively easy. And now memoQ TMS and another product of ours, Fluent, is now SOC 2 compliant. What's next for SOC 2 and for memoQ in 2026? We are entering a new monitoring phase and we have to maintain our security controls and we are going to undergo another surveillance or maintenance audit in November. A few words about transparency and the trust portal. Glenn mentioned that there is the official trust portal for Microsoft. We have something like that as well, trust.memoq.com, where we share our compliance badges and security controls and our overall compliance. This is the platform where you can request documents, artifacts, reports, trust.memoq.com. And this is connected to our GRC tool, so you have a live view of the actual working and existing controls. This is what I wanted to share today. Thank you for your attention, and I believe back to you, Balázs.
Thank you very much. I think, Adam, you can leave this slide here. And although we have one question, I listening to the both of you, I had one thing occurred to me. I looked through the names of the people who joined this webinar, and I'm very happy to see a lot of familiar names. And I always realize, even when dealing with professional associations that we are a member of, that most of our clients are, a high number of our clients are not necessarily large enterprises, but small and medium-sized enterprises or individual language professionals. And I'd like Glenn and Adam to explain what this all means for small and medium-sized enterprises using memoQ services, how Microsoft and memoQ cooperated in achieving these results, because from where I'm sitting, this journey that led to compliance with ISO 27001, compliance with SOC 2, it was 10 years, sometimes arduous 10 years. I have this question in front of me from the agenda that says how Microsoft evaluates and partners with vendors in compliance. And I was part of some of the conversations around this when we started working with this or on this. And I didn't sense any kind of, that Microsoft wasn't checking us. wasn't validating us or verifying or interrogating or call it what you will. But there was this kind of empowerment from both ends. So if Glenn, if you would speak to a bit to how Microsoft approaches this, how you work together with small or medium-sized enterprises like memoQ is, and what you believe it means to memoQ's clients here, and also Adam, I'd like to hear your perspective. So if you could take one minute to briefly speak to this, I would be really grateful.
Of course, yeah. Thank you for the question, and I'll break it into two components. I think one, we look at first. I heard your question of how does Microsoft evaluate its vendors when it chooses to work with people, and for us, you know, I think Adam did a great job representing that SOC 2 is not a destination, it's a journey, and it's a journey that doesn't end. Once you've started it, you're in this continual process because compliance requirements change, global regulations change, and the expectations of everybody changes. So once you've, you know, when you said it's a 10-year journey, yeah, it's a long journey and it doesn't stop.
Yep.
It's much like a passport. It's something you have to renew regularly because that proves who you are. Microsoft, we have a very robust vendor assessment process where when we are choosing to use a vendor for our own services, we have teams that go through this. SOC 2 is part of very important evidence because again, it's not possible for a company to entertain the asks of all of the thousands of customers that would say, show me how you do these things. So we need something that we can collectively trust that represents that. And the importance of the SOC 2 with an independent auditor and the fact that it observes controls working, it is important in that aspect. I'll give you just one last one, which is the other part that we at Microsoft do is we provide a platform for people to build applications, services on. And part of that is we represent to them the level of security that we are providing them to build on, so that helps when they're looking to get their certifications. So if somebody is a smaller organization looking to develop a novel piece of software, one of the benefits of using, again, a platform such as Microsoft is we've gone through an enormous amount of security controls so that you can focus on building your differentiated application and the security in there, and then have that entire process represented. So, but again, it's incredibly important in the United States and Canada and globally. You know, ISO and SOC 2, Adam, what you spoke to, those are the currencies that, again, if you're a small provider, you should look at, because if you're working with things like speech in any area, you're trusting information to these providers, and you want to make sure that they're securing it the way you would. Over to you, Adam.
Thank you. I would like to address two things. Although it was not entirely to memoQ, this question, but we have a very strict vendor management as well. And we basically categorize all our vendors based on a risk score, if they access our systems and if we share data with them, if there is an operational impact, if that vendor disappears. And based on this scoring, we then ask, we do a due diligence and ask follow-up questions. And usually among the questions, as we are being asked to present a SOC 2 report, we ask our vendors as well for SOC 2 report and for ISO 27001 report. And in many cases, if there are missing pieces, then we will ask further questions and do a deeper analysis, maybe a set of security questions. So we have implemented this very granular and very detailed vendor management into our processes. The other thing I wanted to address is how we collaborated throughout the process with Microsoft. And I have to say, 95% of our infrastructure is on Azure, is supported by Microsoft. And as you all know, they have amazing services and systems and tools for security and even recommendations. So on many occasions, we were back and forth between the SOC 2 requirements and between the Azure dashboards, checking for secure score, checking for compliance recommendations. And so it was a pleasure to work with the Microsoft tools. And when we were stuck, we actually reached out to Microsoft engineers for help, and we were able to move on with our topics to reach compliance.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Adam. Let me just because there's a new question in the chat, which is really interesting because I was going to ask a very similar question from a slightly different perspective. The question goes, should vendors, small to medium-sized LSPs that use memoQ have SOC 2 compliance? And the way I wanted to reiterate my previous question was that if memoQ as a software as a service provider and also language service providers and language professionals using memoQ and the memoQ translation management system are all selling to clients who have strict and specific information security demands. And what I would like, again, both Glenn and Adam speak to is how this cooperation, how memoQ status as being compliant with both ISO 27001 and SOC 2 Type 2 helps these small and medium vendors comply with the client requirements. So from my perspective, the question is not as if vendors should be SOC 2 compliant if they want to use memoQ, rather how does memoQ's compliance with SOC 2 help them to be compliant with whatever information security requirements the vendors have? So if the both of you could speak to this briefly, I would really appreciate that. Thanks.
I can take this question partially, and I can give you an example. Throughout our journey before achieving the SOC 2 Type 2 report, there were clients asking for SOC 2. And there were clients who were satisfied with our answers saying that, hey, we actually use a SOC 2 compliant platform, which is Azure, and we actually work with other SOC 2 compliant tools. Is that enough? And we are ISO 27001 certified. Is that enough for you? And some of the clients or prospects said, yes, it's fine. But others said, no, you have this much time to achieve the SOC 2 Type 2 report. So it really depends on your target audience or target clients. If you are targeting banks, you should go ahead and get SOC 2 certified. If in other cases, it may be enough just to say, hey, memoQ is SOC 2 compliant, and throughout your supply chain, you have SOC 2 compliant elements. What do you think, Glenn?
Well, I'm going to echo what you said, and there was another comment on the questions as well that I think is pertinent. So I think first, one of the pieces to underscore is that memoQ or Microsoft, we don't know the individual business and the services any organization is providing. And so for any organization, you know, how do you know, do you need your own SOC 2? That's a determination that an organization has to make, or a provider or whatever service you're in. And I think Adam touched it well. It honestly usually depends on what your customers need. Now, you know, that said, I think if you have information that you're working on that is of a sensitive nature, then you simply get the advantage of having that attestation, having that knowledge that the provider you're using is handling that data safely and securely through their practices. And ultimately, as Adam said, what that may help you do is that may help you reach some customers that have that as a requirement, or to be able to provide assurance to anybody of where things are going.
Thank you very much, both. I would like to echo what Jeremy just posted there to the question posted by Tom, asking what this means for LSPs and translators. And in fact, if you need to meet a strict information security requirements, then many cases a barrier for an individual translator to actually enter into business, because it's a really high barrier if you need to meet these requirements. But even as a small enterprise, you don't always know what the requirements that your enterprise customer communicates you mean. So this is why I think it's not only important to have the certification. I'm talking about memoQ's perspective. It's not only important to actually implement the protections that are reflected in the certification, but it's also important that we communicate about how these certifications, how these protections work. And this is exactly the reason for the Trust Center, trust.memoq.com exists. So if you need to provide information security information about the tool that you use then for your client, then this information is exactly what you will find in the Trust Center. And there's a question that...
Could I add one more
please,
piece that I want to add?
Anytime.
I think depending on where your business is and who you are looking for as customers, one of the hardest things to do is when a customer asks for and says, we can only do work with you if you can prove something like this. It's very hard to change your business model to then go find somebody that meets those requirements. So the other advantage of this is that gives you a provider that has already met this. So maybe your existing clients aren't asking for this if you're smaller, but that may give you the opportunity to go to a broader scope of customers, and then you've got a solution that's already got these things in place, rather when somebody all of a sudden mandates you now need to have a provider with SOC 2 if you're doing translation, and then you have to change and go hunting for it. It takes a lot of work to get this, and part of this is pre-planning and pre-positioning an organization to be ready for the future.
Thank you. A small question in the sense that it has an easy answer, only I don't know it. And this is for Adam. Which compliance platform is currently in place to automate your compliance monitoring processes? And I know we have one. I don't know the answer to the question, Adam.
There are many. It really depends on your infrastructure, I would say. And I intentionally...
It's about memoQ's own infrastructure. What do we use? This is
we use a system called Sprinto and Microsoft Purview Compliance Manager.
Thank you very much. And actually, I hope we conveyed the idea of why memoQ being SOC 2 compliant and cooperating with Microsoft on this is beneficial to the users of memoQ across the board, from the individual translator to the large enterprise using memoQ, because it helps you comply, and on top of that, it keeps your information and operations safe as possible. We know that no 100% safety exists, but this is where I would like to follow up on two things. One of them is information security is not all automated, so you can't expect an information security management system or any kind of information security protection work on its own. It always has a human factor. So information security, to put it bluntly, also depends on the human. And for that reason, all the organizations that claim to be compliant with information security standards and requirements also need to train their staff, their team members, to be able to cooperate with the information security management system. And also it is beneficial for the users of these systems to be aware of, well, at least the fundamentals of information security, to, for instance, not to fall victim to a phishing attack. Like we saw in Glenn's presentation that once you fall victim to a phishing attack, the attacker will usually gain access to your personal data in less than 2 hours. So considering this, what would you say a user, a memoQ client, should or is advised to know about information security, and where can they find the information? Where can they get when they believe they need to be trained, for instance, to understand the kind of information that we provide about our information security systems? Where can they get trained or get further information? So how should they approach that? So this was also my experience when I first encountered these corporate clients that we work with. My question was, where do I get started? Where do I get the information to even understand what they want from me? So how could we help our customers here? So can you, Glenn and Adam, speak to this?
Well, I think it's a little more around memoQ, but what I can go back to and suggest, say, like, is anybody doing information security in an organization, I can rely on technology for lots of things, but technology isn't ultimately, it doesn't compare to the human brain's decision capability. And so honestly, what people's choice and actions every day are ultimately most organizations' best cybersecurity defense. So every organization, whether big, small, is spending time and effort into teaching people regularly, trying to train people on what to look for and how to act and how to behave. I would say no matter whether you're big or small, one of the pieces that I would leave you with is, if you don't have multi-factor authentication enabled, please go do it. It's essential. It's one of the best protections against what people are attacking right now. But there are a whole host of other recommendations, and I'll work with Balazs to provide a site that that has information. In Canada, we have a center in Canada. The United States has one, and the EU will have one as well that recognize the threats that each area is facing.
Just
Go
a
ahead,
quick
Adam.
addition to that. My answer may be a bit controversial, but I believe this current emergence of AI tools, these AI tools are very good at distilling data and information, and I believe they can be used to research resources for IT security or security best practices on different levels, maybe on a user level or an administrator level. That can be a great start. Copilot can be a great start to do that. So it's very, very easy to find information.
Second what Adam says, but I'd like to point out, when you prompt Copilot or any other kind of AI system or AI-based searching system, always make sure that you ask the AI to provide you with sources, give you the URLs, the document,
Exactly.
the sites. You can search for, okay, give me an information security 101, obviously with sources, and what is the best introductory information security course that I, as an individual translation professional, can get started with, for instance. But it's also really important to have multi-factor authentication set up, even with your individual account. Some providers will force you to do that, others will not. And also, it's one of the things that we do here at memoQ is that there are tests. Sometimes our IT team sends out simulated phishing messages, and these need to be reported, and the team is assessed how well they spot these and report these, and this helps keep the awareness alive. But it's really important to be able to distinguish the genuine from the fake and from the fraudulent.
Much like I'm sure all of your listeners go to the gym or go to walk or exercise regularly or brush their teeth regularly. Training for cybersecurity is something that can be done in small bites, but has to be done regularly to be effective.
Yeah, we all need to brush our digital teeth. So It's true. It's true. Brian Cho is asking, our office is ISO IEC 27001 certified, and our memoQ environment hosted on AWS is within the ISO 27001 scope. Does this allow us to represent memoQ on AWS environment as SOC 2 compliant? It sounds like a complicated question. It just fell in. I don't think so, but I'm not the expert. So Adam, if you could look at the question,
Yes, it's complicated. So memoQ as a hosted solution is SOC 2 compliant as well. So all the processes related to the development of the memoQ server and memoQ TMS solution are SOC 2 compliant. So I would say in this scenario, especially I believe AWS is SOC 2 compliant too. We can say that this is SOC 2 compliant. But of course, now we don't talk about AWS.
No, but the AWS didn't fall under the scope of memoQ SOC 2 audit.
No.
So this is not something we could certify. What we can certify is that memoQ's own infrastructure that runs on Microsoft Azure, that includes the systems, private clouds, multi-tenant clouds systems hosted by memoQ, those are certified, and also the development environment, development infrastructure that memoQ TMS is developed on is also SOC 2 SOC 2 certification doesn't exist, audited for SOC 2, and we can say that it's SOC 2 compliant. But yeah, so the AWS is completely out of the jurisdiction, and also if an individual organization is hosting a memoQ system on premises, that falls outside the jurisdiction of our SOC 2 compliance. But even you will get some level of protection because the development process and environment is also audited. Sorry, there is no such thing as SOC 2 certified. But this is unfortunately our time is running out, and I have a lot of questions in my agenda, and we have one last question here, which is not necessarily straightforward to me. It's in the Q&A section. Does memoQ use blockchain technology to protect customers? And I don't think so. But I'm again not the expert, so we don't actively use blockchain technology.
No, we don't. But we not blockchain technology, but we are looking at improving our encryption technologies, data. Not data at rest, but connected data encryption. And actually, as a matter of fact, this year we are checking post-quantum encryption options. So I know it's not as fancy as blockchain, but this will be very important in the future.
I beg to differ. The post-quantum encryption options, encryption algorithms would definitely fascinate me. More than blockchain does. But
we could have an entire seminar just on post-quantum cryptography and its impact. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So unfortunately, our time is up. Let me again share this housekeeping slides. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your interest. And I just want to, before we go, I just want to ask you if you like this, if you work with memoQ TMS, if you like working with memoQ TMS, if you have experience that you want to share, just leave a review on g2.com. And I would like to thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed the webinar. I hope this was insightful. I see that the chat had a lot of insights. My experience is that in Teams, sometimes the most interesting conversations are going on in the chat in parallel to the actual video conference that is going on. I'd like to thank Glenn and Adam for the presentations, for the insight, for the openness to talk to our audience, and I would especially thank Adam for his incredible work in facilitating and actually implementing the protections that actually resulted as memoQ being the one of the most secure, if not the most secure translation management systems out there. So thank you very much again. And see you next time.